Good morning. The first item of business is general questions. At question number 1, I call Fergus Ewing.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government, in light of reports that the worst wildfires ever recorded in Scottish history affected the areas around Dava, Lochindaub and Carbridge this summer, what discussions the Rural Affairs Secretary has had with ministerial colleagues regarding potentially commissioning an independent review of wildfire management practices?
Minister Jim Fairley.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Myself, alongside the Minister for Victims and Community Safety, will host a wildfire summit on October the 14th. The focus will be on wildfire prevention measures, the response to recent wildfires and the appropriateness of our resources and our deployment. All key stakeholders will be invited to attend and input into the discussion. Furthermore, the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service is conducting a series of debriefs to help identify lessons learned from this year's response. We will then consider if further evidence or advice is required to ensure that we have an appropriate mitigation and response plans in place.
Fergus Ewing.
Well, Presiding Officer, the question was not answered, but be that as it may, the fact is that many deaths occurring in major fires are caused not through the fire itself, but through smoke inhalation, where people try to flee the fire in vehicles using the road on which they arrived. The two areas in Scotland with thousands of visitors every day for most of the year are Glenmore and Rower-Denon. One road in, one road out. Does the Minister agree with me that before next Easter, it's essential that a detailed plan is compiled to be in a position effectively to tackle serious fires in such locations? Otherwise, there's a serious risk of catastrophic loss of life. And does he not agree that an independent review is really the best way to do that, other than a variety of public bodies marking their own jotters?
Minister.
Presiding Officer, Fergus Ewing has already written to myself and the Minister, Siobhan Brown, to seek a meeting. When we have that meeting, which I have agreed to host, he can raise these individual points about the areas that he is specifically concerned about. However, in terms of the independent review that he's talking about, what is more appropriate is to make sure that we've got the experts in the room, the people who know exactly how to manage wildfires, what wildfire mitigation is. They will be the ones who will be in the room having a proper discussion about how we put resilience into our systems going forward.
Edward Mountain.
Thank you, and I'm interested to hear the Minister will be attending a meeting. I wrote to him on the 8th of August requesting such a meeting, and he told me this morning he was too busy between now and Christmas. Well, here you go. There's 62 fires this year in the Highlands. That's the highest ever since 5 years ago when there were 85. We've still got a big part of the year to go. 575 fires in the Highlands in the last 10 years. That's a third of all fires in Scotland. And it's going to get worse, Minister, because of things like the Muirburn Code. Surely we should have centralised assets, including access to aircraft, fixed and rotary, to fight fires and save lives, and not rely on private estates and the will of good neighbours to fight these fires.
Minister.
In response to the first point that Edward Mountain made, he's absolutely correct. I have refused to attend the meeting that he has already asked for, on the basis that there are a number of events that we are already planning in order to get experts in the room who know exactly what they're talking about. As far as our ability to be able to go forward, that's what these discussions will be about, and I am more than happy to share that with the Chamber as we develop them.
Question number 2, Fulton McGregor.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what action it has taken to ensure that people with increased genetic risk of developing cervical cancer are offered additional screening tests.
Minister Jenny Minto.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Scotland's screening policy follows UK National Screening Committee recommendations. The committee recommends cervical screening for eligible participants every 5 years. While it has not recommended additional screening based on genetic considerations, women are offered more frequent screening if their previous result is HPV positive, indicating they may be at higher risk. Importantly, where HPV is not detected, evidence strongly suggests a very low risk of developing cancers within 10 years. Regardless of risk factors, anyone experiencing cervical cancer symptoms should not wait for screening but contact their GP immediately. Information on symptoms can be found on NHS Inform.
Fulton McGregor.
I thank the Minister for that response. Recently, I met with a family of siblings at my constituency surgery following the death of their dear mother, Lavina Gilfillan, who sadly passed away from cervical cancer. They shared with me that Lavina's sister had been diagnosed with cervical cancer at the age of 21 and subsequently underwent a hysterectomy. Given this significant family history, the family believe that Lavina should have been offered enhanced screening and monitoring, but they state that this did not happen and instead she was diagnosed at a later, more advanced stage. The family are now considering lodging a petition at the Scottish Parliament calling for the introduction of a cervical cancer family risk and genetic screening policy, which would aim to provide genetic counselling and testing for families with a strong history of cervical cancer, introduce enhanced screening schedules including earlier start ages, more frequent smear and HPV testing and access to colposcopy where appropriate, and ensure that both healthcare professionals and the public are aware of family history of cervical cancer should trigger a protective action. I agreed to raise this on the family's behalf, and I'd be grateful if the Minister or Cabinet Secretary would agree to meet with the family.
I thank Fulton McGregor for his follow-up question, and I would like to send my deepest sympathies to his constituents and their wider family. I fully understand their desire to prevent others going through what they have. I would, of course, be very pleased to meet them to discuss their proposals. I should, however, reiterate that our policies must be supported by the evidence, and we will always listen to the National Screening Committee and other UK scientific organisations to ensure we make decisions that are clinically supported. I will be happy to discuss this in more detail and listen to the family.
Pam Duncan-Glancy.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The Minister will be aware that following the tragic death of a constituent of mine, I've been looking into what arrangements are in place to ensure physical access for disabled people and disabled women in particular in GP surgeries and elsewhere so they can access smear tests and other similar screening procedures. I've since heard from GPs that funding for access and modernisation of equipment came from the Improvement Fund, but that this has now stopped. Can I ask the Minister to confirm what support is available to surgeries and other medical treatment facilities to help them ensure that they are accessible to all patients?
Minister.
I thank Pam Duncan-Clancy for her question and very much appreciated the conversation that I had with her on this specific subject. As a result, it made me recognise when I was visiting a gynaecology area within NHS Fife the importance of the investment that they had made in specific technology that was able to support women that had additional requirements for screening. I would be very happy to follow up in writing to Ms Glancy's specific question.
Question number 3, Pauline McNeill.
To ask the Scottish Government what discussions it's had with Turner and Townsend regarding its role in auditing and monitoring the work undertaken by Amey to complete the M8 Woodside viaducts.
Cabinet Secretary Fiona Hislop.
Since May 2023, Turner and Townsend has provided Transport Scotland with commercial assurance and project control support on the M8 Woodside temporary propping project. They are in regular dialogue with the Transport Scotland team and attend frequent project programme boards and provide commentary regarding project progress. Turner and Townsend review and comment on tender submissions from Amey and their subcontractors, review cost forecasting and assist Transport Scotland with future budget setting. They input to project risk reviews and quantify a suitable risk allowance to be included in the project cost range.
Pauline McNeill.
The Cabinet Secretary is aware that the completion dates for the M8 Woodside Viaduct repairs are currently autumn 26 eastbound and late 27 for the westbound carriageway. That's 6 years since the project began, and the budget's gone from 33 million to 152 million. In 2021, the works were classed as emergency, meaning there are no penalty clauses for late delivery. So ask the Scottish Government how they're going to ensure that the work is done efficiently and timely. Can they require Amey to take steps to accelerate the works, such as overtime, for example, which would be reasonable? So what measures can the expert group and Turner and Townsend, who are monitoring the performance, to put in place to ensure that Amey are held to account, given the nature of the contract with no penalty clauses, to ensure that there are no further delays to the repair of the M8 viaduct?
Cabinet Secretary.
So clearly safety is a primary concern, but also value for money and cost management, which I referred to, and that has to be regularly scrutinised and accounted for. In terms of penalty clauses, may I refer to the member to the briefing that she received, and indeed other members did, about some of the challenges that have been facing the 23 different locations that have to be addressed, including uncharted obstruction near the Strathclyde passenger transport subway. Now, clearly, uncharted, unrecorded, or recorded in a different area of uncharted obstructions is not something that we would expect necessarily to have on a penalty issue. This is a very difficult and challenging project. I think everybody understands that. And her point about can anything be brought forward, we will try, particularly on those elements that are requiring more attention because of the intensity of the traffic.
Question number 4, Tess White.
To ask the Scottish Government whether it has engaged with the Equality and Human Rights Commission in relation to the 19 public bodies and organisations that were found to have misrepresented the Equality Act 2010.
Cabinet Secretary Shirley-Anne Somerville.
The EHRC has not published the details of or otherwise informed the Scottish Government of the 19 organisations that they have written to, following their review of evidence from the UK Government on single-sex space policies. This review process is a matter for the EHRC in fulfilling its statutory function role to monitor and enforce compliance with the Equality Act 2010.
Tess White.
Cabinet Secretary, the SNP Government has let public bodies break the law, betray women and burn public money, defending the indefensible, and it's absolutely shameful. The EHRC has reprimanded 19 organisations for misrepresenting the Equality Act 2010, yet the SNP Government is still peddling guidance which promotes self-ID to schools and prisons. Public bodies are completely at sea because the SNP put ideology before women's rights. Can the Minister tell us if she will be finding out if any of these organisations are based here in Scotland, and will she and the Government issue a directive to public bodies to follow the law by the end of the year at the latest?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, as I've already made clear to the Chamber on a number of occasions, the Scottish Government accepts the Supreme Court judgment and action is being undertaken. As well as accepting that judgment, we are moving forward with the detailed work that is necessary as a consequence. And I have again spoken in detail previously, Presiding Officer, on the working group that is considering that work right across government. We are not aware, out of the 19 bodies, how many are in Scotland. This is a matter for the EHRC. We've been clear, of course, to the public bodies in Scotland that we expect all bodies to follow lawful practice.
Question number 5, Sandesh Gulhani, who joins us remotely. I call question number 5, Sandesh Gulhani. I'll move on to question number 6 at the moment and call Kenneth Gibson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what discussions it has had recently with ScotRail regarding increasing the service frequency on the Lags to Glasgow Central route.
Cabinet Secretary Fiona Hislop.
Officials at Transport Scotland are in a continued dialogue with ScotRail and Scottish Rail Holdings to ensure that the services provided by ScotRail meet passenger needs as much as possible. ScotRail has no immediate plans to increase the current service level between Largs and Glasgow Central as it continues to meet passenger demand and matches the frequency provided prior to the COVID pandemic. Thanks to the Scottish Government's investment, passengers travelling on the line benefit from the consistently high-performing electrified railway. In addition, commuters are now saving considerable amounts on their travel since this Government's initiative to remove peak fares for good.
Kenneth Gibson.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that response. When the Largs line was electrified in 1987, the double track was reduced to a single one, restricting the number of trains able to run in each direction. Largs Station served 384,000 passengers last year, 25% more than the previous year, and numbers are virtually back to pre-COVID levels while national rail usage still lags behind. There's clearly an appetite for more train travel to Largs, but line infrastructure limits the current service to 1 an hour. Will the Cabinet Secretary press Network Rail and other partners to invest in the branch line to deliver the half-hourly service that better reflects growing demand?
Cabinet Secretary.
So, as I replied in my initial answer, the current service level for passengers in Largs is consistent with pre-COVID levels. It's meeting existing demand. Clearly, he makes the case for added investment and infrastructure investment. Obviously, he knows that we have to prioritise, and there are a considerable amount of infrastructure investment already taking place in our railways within immediate budgets. There are no immediate plans to double-track the track, and that's what would be required to deliver what the member is asking for. But he has made the case and he's brought it to my attention, so I'll ensure that my officials discuss that with Network Rail.
As we have been unable yet to make contact with Dr Gilhani, continue to question number 7. I call Katie Clark.
To ask the Scottish Government whether it will make a direct award to the Ferguson Marine Shipyard for the replacement of the MV Lord of the Isles.
Cabinet Secretary.
Ministers consider all new vessel projects, including the MV Lord of the Isles, on a case-by-case basis to determine an appropriate and lawful route to market. Shipbuilding is a competitive global market. Any direct award of a public contract must comply with applicable procurement and subject control rules and be capable of withstanding legal challenge. Direct award of public contracts is only possible in strictly limited circumstances, and these matters take time to consider. We are currently considering the business case and the next steps in relation to the replacement of the MV Lord of the Isles, and will confirm these in due course.
Katie Clark.
Given these lifeline ferries are critical infrastructure, will the Scottish Government consider a direct award under Section 45 of the Subsidy Control Act? And I'm sure that the UK Government would be willing to work with them on this, given they've already made representations in relation to procurement law. Or, if the Scottish Government are going to go out to tender, will they look at what's happening in other parts of the UK, where the UK Government is placing a minimum of 10% social value element into the assessment of bids for shipbuilding contracts? That's not happening in Scotland. So will the Scottish Government look to include a social value weighting in any tendering processes?
Cabinet Secretary.
So we do have social value weighting in our current procurement legislation. I can confirm that we're actively looking at the options of both direct award and competitive procurement to determine an appropriate and lawful route for procurement. But I would refer, because I think it's important that we do reference what the islanders think themselves, and I'd like to quote, for a bit of balance in the media coverage, Don Daniel Peterana from the South Uist Business Impact Group, who in local media said, "We have every sympathy for the skilled workforce at Port Glasgow and for the need to sustain shipbuilding on the Clyde, but sympathy cannot come at the cost of island lives, livelihoods and long-term sustainability. To use our ferry needs as a tool for political point scoring would send out a deeply damaging message to our communities." But I think the tone in which the member has asked the question and the context she's done that would allow all the Chamber to consider this very important issue, but reflect all the needs, both the workforce and the islanders.
I regret that due to connectivity reasons I'm unable to call Sandesh Gilhani. I call Douglas Ross at question number 8.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government, in light of the unified statement agreed at the Community Council Convention of the Highland Council area regarding the impact of major energy infrastructure in the region, will the Cabinet Secretary for Climate Action and Energy give a response to this statement, and will she attend a future convention meeting to discuss it?
Minister Jim Fairley.
Presiding Officer, I should point out that I'm answering on behalf of the Cabinet Secretary. And will say that we are clear that the potential impacts of major infrastructure necessitates pre-application consultation and engagement with local communities. The Scottish Government has published good practice guidance on the procedures for applications under Sections 36 and 37 of the Electricity Act, which includes information on public consultations. While the power to mandate community benefits sits with the UK Government, we continue to press for mandatory provision from mature onshore technologies and a level playing field across the UK to ensure the energy transition delivers real benefits. Maintaining the standards of the Ministerial Code regarding live applications means Government Ministers cannot attend public meetings of this nature.
Douglas Ross.
I'm sorry, that is not true, and it is not an answer to a very clear question. So can the Minister take this back to the Cabinet Secretary? There is no breach in the Ministerial Code for the Cabinet Secretary to meet and listen to concerns in the Highland Council area. That is all we are asking for, Minister. Can you pass that on to the Cabinet Secretary?
Minister.
I should point out to the member that, as a former minister, he will know that when we are looking at specific applications, there are clear guidelines within the Ministerial Code. However, I will take his point back to the Cabinet Secretary and she will respond in due course.